Ethnography of Storytelling. This semester, I dedicated my attention towards storytelling. Stories accumulated from church members, alumni, students, and tribal members. These empirical storytellers reflect cultural beliefs. Throughout my research, cultural storytelling was my unit of analysis. My ethnographic research was conducted to analyze the role of storytelling in relation to identity. Each week, storytelling allowed me to relate cultural beliefs to individual identities. Individual identities are grounded in some cultural role that has been assigned to us through storytelling. Each culture has a unique setting that plays a key role in identification. This logic allowed me to travel from California to Oregon in order to further explore cultural storytelling. I attended multiple churches, on and off campus events put on by students or community members, and tribal ceremonies to accumulate stories. My report includes individuals that represent identities in my surrounding area. These individuals occupied areas that have cultural roles to fulfill. For instance, churches, college campus, and tribal ceremonies are designed with specific identities for individuals. This ethnographic report analyzes church, tribal, and community members who encourage storytelling as a form of self-identification. Storytelling is a prominent tool in all cultures. To research this cultural tool, I attended numerous ceremonies. In these ceremonies, I was either provided oral or written stories. Oral stories are a tribal tradition. On the other hand, written stories were provided by the university, community, events, and churches. Essentially, all of these methods of storytelling was analyzed for my ethnographic report. Throughout my research, I encountered a few barriers. These barriers represented cultural beliefs. Specifically, the cannabis culture in Oregon and Northern California gave individuals comfort. Since the cannabis culture is prominent in both areas, social actors were comfortable with their addictions. With that being said, the research barrier was the connection between cannabis and cultural storytelling, meaning, in some settings, cannabis and addictions in general is a taboo topic. However, tribal ceremonies welcome various forms of smoke medicine. In contrast, churches and college campuses are intolerant due to cultural beliefs of intolerance. Personally, I would have enjoyed discussions about smoke medicine in all of my settings. Unfortunately, only tribal ceremonies had a high tolerance for traditional cultural practices, such as smoke medicine. To conclude, my research barrier included taboo topics that were tolerated in some settings and intolerable in others. Another research barrier was the credibility of institutions that derived based on false stories. Few people wanted to address the origins of their cultural beliefs. For instance, some interviewees were not cooperative when I wanted to address the benefits they received from their allegiance to false stories. This made it difficult for me to conduct an accurate analysis of the origins of cultural storytelling. Church members only wanted to reference their biblical written stories and not their allegiance to nationalism. However, tribal members told stories about their ancestral inheritance and how institutional greed stifled their inheritance. At HSU, few departments tell the story of natives and the establishment of current cultural beliefs. All in all, this was a barrier in my report because of cultural beliefs of intolerance towards native peoples, inheritance, and the illegitimacy of current institutions. Initially, my ethnographic report was conducted to research stories in higher education. These stories were going to address relationships that gratify social prejudices. Instead, I decided to allow the stories I was presented throughout my semester to be my story. This ethnographic development had many dimensions due to all of the stories I accumulated in the past 14 weeks. In this ethnographic report, I concluded that oral and written storytelling was fairly similar. Tribal oral storytelling seemed to be more sacred due to it being word of mouth. Institutional written storytelling is easily obtainable since it is archived. During my collection of individual stories through cultural beliefs, I was able to see intercultural similarities such as trust. Trust is essential for the lifespan of oral and written stories. In Oregon, I was able to attend a Mormon church. This church seemed strange solely because of stories that led to my predisposition towards Mormonism. Once the service was finished, I realized that the Mormon religion was like any other cultural belief. Unlike oral storytelling, trust in this cultural belief was written in the Book of Mormon. During the service, I was able to get artifacts that were books which had stories that supported Mormon beliefs. The Mormon belief system mirrored the trust necessary in other churches, education, and tribal culture. HSU is regarded culturally as a system of higher education. This cultural belief is necessary to perpetuate trust in California's educational system. At the beginning of the semester, I was a part of the Bowman Forum occupation. During this occupation, unified students were able to have a personal assessment of the cultural climate on campus. After weeks of being genuinely interested in the well-being of underrepresented communities on campus, we were given the cold shoulder by the administration. Obviously, this was not a shock to students who experienced overt prejudice on and off campus. In relation to this report, our campus administration perpetuated fundamental cultural beliefs to engage with unified students, meaning the administration disregarded unified students to perpetuate their agenda that gratifies written stories that neglect underrepresented students. Similar to cultural beliefs in churches or in tribal communities, this campus has allegiance to stories that they were institutionalized to trust. Last month, I was able to talk to a student in Black Student Union who was upset about the on-campus tasing. This BSU member is also a part of Associated Students, so she is familiar with the HSU administration. She spoke to the administration, specifically the VP of Student Affairs, to have the university address the incident. In response, the VP claimed she would not engage in that situation unless more students voiced concerns surrounding the tasing incident. Culturally, selective vision on campus is imperative to instill trust in this educational institution. My ethnographic research highlighted this incident to remind viewers that the administration ignored the tasing of a black male because it is an institutional protocol, meaning our culture thrives off the degradation of specific demographics so our administration supports institutional apathy. Institutional apathy in this educational system is visible in the context of this incident. To clarify, police brutality in relation to black populations has not been addressed by our administration due to their cultural beliefs that support apathy. As a result, our cultural climate on campus perpetuates prejudice beliefs which allow the tasing of a black male by UPD to be unpunished. During Black Heritage Month, I was able to meet a former black faculty member. He invited students to his church in Eureka to celebrate Black Heritage Month. This church lacked diversity and it mirrored the demographics of the administration on our campus. After students visited his church, we asked him to come talk about his experience as a faculty member at HSU. At the end of April, he came on campus and described his experience as the chair of the Ethnic Studies Department. Essentially, he talked about the institutional prejudice that was inflicted upon him by the administration. Unfortunately, the administration that is intact now is new, but their actions mirror the old administration. The former faculty member talked about the lack of support given to the Ethnic Studies Department and the constant pressure to perform despite lack of support. Next, he talked about being tenured and how that still didn't stop the administration from letting him go for new blood. Basically, I was able to connect institutionalized prejudice to cultural beliefs in the old and new administration. On our campus, it is necessary to have selective vision to continue the legacy of written stories that support allegiance to fundamental cultural beliefs of prejudice. The ethnography of storytelling was a heavy research topic. There were plenty of examples about allegiance to oral and/or written stories in relation to cultural beliefs. My analysis of churches, communities on and off campus, and tribal cultures allowed me to explore dimensions of identity. In closing, my research addressed identification from the context of storytelling.